All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Simply Finance with Shane White. I'm pumped today to have Amin Bahari from Elite Suites on the podcast. Amin, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thanks, Shane, for having me. I'm excited. I've been listening to a couple of the episodes recently, and I had to get on here.
I appreciate that. Thank you for even listening. It's funny. I've known you for a little while now. Met through the Super Coffee Bros, and I just love what you guys are doing. I have anyone watching. I brought a bunch down, and if you're watching, you can see it in the background. But you guys have created what's called the Elite Donut. You have three flavors today: birthday cake, cinnamon sugar, and chocolate. I will say they are delicious. They get crushed in our house, and anyway, just love what you guys are building and wanted to have you on. So would you mind giving everyone just a little bit of a background into you and what you're building?
Yeah, no, definitely. So, my name is Amin Bahari. For everyone listening, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Elite Suites, and we're headquartered out of Austin, Texas. At Elite Suites, we're creating healthier alternatives to traditional sweets. And really, for us, just kind of give you a little backstory on why we started. The inspiration for Elite Suites goes back to my days in high school. Myself and my twin brother, who's also my co-founder, we grew up in a family with diabetes and obesity, and we were actually on the verge of it ourselves. At age 16, I weighed 340 pounds. My brother, he was also extremely overweight. And, after seeing the negative effects of those diseases like firsthand, we knew that wasn't the life we wanted to live. And so that's when we adopted like a high protein keto lifestyle. And in just over a year, I lost 140 pounds. My brother, Amir, he lost about 100 pounds himself. And, that's really where the inspiration for health and fitness began. And we always just we always sought out like healthier alternatives or like protein packed, everything protein packed sweets. And so it was just kind of natural for us. It was kind of part of our lifestyle at that time. And it was actually years later, we stayed home. We went to the University of Texas at Austin. And during my time there, I was working with the Texas football team where we were kind of surrounded by the high protein cookies, brownie shakes, and we'd eat that stuff all day long. And at nights, we always found ourselves at the local donut shop. I mean, like 3 to 4 times a week. And working with the football team, we're always surrounded with a lot of the football players. These guys were training for the NFL draft. And during that time, they would scarf down dozens of donuts when we were at the donut shop. And we were obviously eating a ton of donuts. I think we all know when someone brings a dozen of donuts, we're not just stopping at one. And
Right.
so it just kind of hit us one day. We just thought to ourselves, what if there was like a better for you option, like a low sugar protein packed donut? And we just kind of took a look at the market and we saw, we really saw the opportunity. There was no one really doing it at the time. We saw what, companies like Halo Top are doing in the ice cream category. We saw the protein cookies, brownies, things like that. And so we just kind of looked at the opportunity, the category size, and we just thought, why not us? We thought it was a great idea. And we figured if it wasn't going to be us, someone else is going to capitalize on this opportunity. And that's kind of how we got started. My brother got to work in our apartment kitchen, and thus Elite Suites was born.
Wow. No, that's really cool. I didn't know that full backstory. Was it like you guys getting on keto? That was even back at a time I feel like before keto was like what keto is now. Like keto is
Right,
enormous.
right.
What was kind of the reason for even getting into keto? Because to me, that feels like the total beginning of this. Like if you guys would have done like vegan or paleo or something else, you guys probably would have never maybe come up with this idea.
Yeah, it's funny because at the time, we didn't know it was necessarily keto. It was kind of before the term was really popularized, if you will. This was back in like 2012. So this was definitely early days of keto, but it was really just kind of like a high protein, low carb diet that we focused on, really just kind of limiting our meals, calorie intake, all of that. And so it was just a natural keto diet. It wasn't like we sought out to find a new thing. It was just what worked for us. And we just kind of optimized our diet and our fitness regimen over time, and it really worked for us. We were kind of we were shedding weight pretty quickly, and um, it just so happens to be called keto today.
Yeah. Sure. No, that's fair. That's totally fair. And then for you guys, like back then, this is a question I get asked sometimes is like, where did you even start to do market research? Like, you know, you can Google some things, maybe you can go on Amazon and look, but like, what were some of those like early indicators for you guys from like a market research fit that there was not a better for you donut that was like this?
Yeah, I think it really started kind of basic and high level for us. So We love donuts, and we know everyone loves donuts, right? It's one of those things like ice cream, cookies is kind of one of those larger categories. So we kind of just looked at the category size and saw the opportunity. And then we just looked at, other products and the innovation that was brought to these products. And it just it just really didn't make sense to us that no one had done a donut yet. It was just one of those like obvious, like how has no one done this yet? And so that's what got us interested in the whole thing. Growing up, we didn't think we were going to be selling donuts, but here we are today. So it's interesting how it all came together. But in terms of research, it was really just kind of looking at the opportunity of like of different categories. So at the time, gluten-free was really a big thing. Now keto is kind of a big trend. And so capitalizing on all these opportunities, but really at our core at Elite Sweets, we really focus on the functionality. So high protein, low sugar. For us, that's something that's always been like resonated with us and done well in our diet is just low sugar generally, because diabetes is something that runs in our family, but really having that functionality of protein, we always kind of wanted to put on muscle while we were losing weight. And so that's how it all started for us. But just kind of looking at the opportunities in the different categories, we just thought it was obvious.
Sure. Yeah. No, I get that. That makes sense. Is the was like do you go like do you think back to the first donut? If you think back to that, do you remember that still? Like the very first donut you guys made?
Oh yeah, yeah. Mir, my twin brother and co-founder, he was the one who was making it, and oh, they were horrible. I thought the idea was good, because initially he was the one who kind of got it rolling, and I thought the idea was there. I just knew the product wasn't. So I was like, I want to get behind this whole thing, but at the time we were in college, we don't have any money or anything like that, and it was obvious to me that the product wasn't going to be the one we take to market, or that it was going to be a big success. And so that was one of the things that I was really adamant about early on, is like, if we're going to do this, we really need to bring on some help on the product side of things. And we need to, we need to improve this and actually make something that people want. But, I'll give it to him. He got the ball rolling for us. He got started in the apartment kitchen. He eventually dropped out to bake full time at my parents' house. And then eventually we got into a commercial kitchen where we're making it ourselves. So it was really a slow grind. There's no such thing as an overnight success, but it took us years to kind of really get the ball rolling and commercialize this thing.
Wow, that's wild. And so it was
Yeah.
the making it with so was it were you guys still in college? Were you still going to the University of Texas when you guys were like creating this like version one of the donut in your own apartment?
Yeah. So I guess we technically got started, and it was March 2017. So I graduated in May 2017. So a couple months before I graduated, that's when we were really kind of getting the ball rolling. I think what was really one of the determining factors at the time, or what kind of led to it all, was I was working with the football team, but obviously the season was over and it was the last semester in school. So it's kind of like out of season, and everyone's, the athletes are training, preparing for the NFL around that time, right before the draft in April. And I was getting ready to graduate and try to figure out, what was I going to do next? I knew I didn't want to work a job or, work for anybody else. And so it was just a natural fit, and, everything kind of just worked out for us.
Yeah. I laugh thinking back to that part of your story because I remember trying to kick some ideas around like junior, senior year of college. And I have obviously ended up not going down that path and took a full-time job. As you came to the spring semester of your senior year, did you know that you like didn't you already at that time knew you didn't want to go get like a quote unquote a real job and you wanted to like create something? Or did it just kind of fall into like the funny timing of you guys
Yeah.
thinking a better for you donut was the right thing and you decided to just go all in on it?
Yeah. So it was a little bit of both. You know, I never wanted to get a job, but also kind of faced the reality of like, oh, I need to get some money before I can start my own thing. I think that's one thing that everyone misconception about business and just, a startup generally, is that you have to be well funded, or you have to, have a lot of money. And I think the reality is, like, if you're willing to put in the hard work, the time, the effort, you can bootstrap your startup and grind. Now, was it easy? Hell no. Looking back on it, would I have done it again? Probably not. But when you're young and naive and you have the energy, it's like, why not? And so I think that's kind of what got us started. So for me, it was kind of natural, natural timing. right when I finished school, I just had a bunch of time to really devote to Elite Suites and kind of getting it started. And it really took us a while to grind. And I mean, we can kind of get into it, but like long story short, I actually did take a job out of college because I was like, if Amir is going to do all the baking and do that full time, like someone's going to have to fund it a little bit by
Ah,
ingredients, stuff like that. So I actually worked for about 2.5 months. And then I ultimately quit that job to go do a pitch competition, which fortunately we were able to win. And that got us funding to really start the business and go full time. If you will. We were already kind of full time, but like to really dive in and make some progress, hire a product developer, and get the product where it needed to be.
so wow. So if I like backtrack there,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
4 to 5 months after the idea, you're winning a pitch competition, essentially. Is that right? Ish? 6 months?
It was let me think. So it was about a year. It was about a year later. So I didn't start the job right out of school.
Okay.
But yeah, I eventually I got a job a few months after school. So I was kind of like we were kicking around the idea of Elite Suites, and I got the job and then ultimately quit. But yeah, that's it happened pretty quickly though.
Yeah. No, it's funny because that part of your story is interesting to me too, because I think a lot of people that I talk to and interact with would not argue, but they would say that little time and that decision is probably when most people decide to like tap out and not pursue a dream.
Mhm.
What would your advice be to people like, it was actually funny. I had a podcast the other day where I talked about like back when I was in college, I would work my ass off all summer to make
Mhm.
enough to be able to spend throughout the school year. But by literally the last day of the school year, I pretty much was at zero. Like I would spend everything I made. And so I was like this cycle. So when I got out of school, before I took my first full-time job, like I was starting at zero, like no investments,
Mhm.
no nothing. So how would you explain to someone who wants to start something, or maybe was in your exact same shoes? Um, how did you quote unquote bootstrap it? Did you guys just have some money left over for yourselves? Did you guys ask family and friends? Like, how did you guys kind of get the first few batches up and off the ground?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And there was definitely no money for ourselves. I'll tell you that. I actually personally just started um, taking a little bit of I guess, getting on payroll, if you will, getting a paycheck with our Series Seed round. So we just raised recently a couple million. So it was years before I took my first paycheck. So no, I mean, living in our parents' house, cutting all our expenses, living a college lifestyle, if you will, but well, without the student loans and all that. So no, we really grinded. And, I think for us, just really kind of looking back to like for advice for others, I guess. I would say the biggest thing is there's no, perfect timing in life. There's no right amount of money. And I think that's what people are always waiting for is like, oh, once I have X dollars, X amount of time, then I'll go for it. But the reality is that day never comes. And if you're just waiting and waiting, you lose your opportunity and someone else will come in and, take advantage of that. And I think that's what it was for us. We were at the time, we didn't have a lot to lose. We were coming out of college. It was not like we had money or jobs, kids, or like a ton of responsibility. It was just like, if we're going to do this, this is the perfect time to do this. Because there's just not a lot. So I think it's all about risk assessment. And, for us, worst case scenario, we lost time, but at least we gave it our all. And so that's kind of how we got started. And, for me, like I took the job and it was one of those things where I had this opportunity to go do the pitch competition. I told them, hey, I need, a week off to prepare for this pitch. I was like, at the time it was like a couple $100,000. And it was like, I could win this just by going and competing. And they were like, oh, you're in training. You can't miss X amount of days. I was like, all right, cool. Turned in my equipment and left. And
That
um,
was it.
yeah, that was it. I was like, I can go get another job and a better one at that. So it was like, it was no questions asked. I was just doing it just to make a little bit of money. But half the time I was like, on the other computer working on Elite Suites and stuff like that. But yeah, ultimately, left, spent the week preparing for the pitch competition. Then we actually got advanced to the next round. And then, same thing, we had a 1 week to prepare and ultimately won. And so we ended up getting funding from WeWork at the time. We won 180K. And then it was actually like a month later on National Donut Day. the CEO at the time, Adam Newman, he calls us and goes, "Hey guys, I really like what you're doing," and doubled our funding. And so it was like, you know,
Wow.
just by taking that risk, now we have 360K to get our business started. And that's really where Elite Suites kind of got the ball rolling. And really, that was like the inflection point early on for us. But it's all because I took the risk. You know what I mean? I could have said, "Yeah, I need this job, I need the money," but you know, I didn't waste any time, and I seized the opportunity.
Wow. So you got an actual call from Adam Newman. That's a cool,
Yeah,
that's a nice little surprise for the podcast. That's wild. So you guys
yeah,
just
yeah.
so you just called and loved the product. Have you talked to him since all of his craziness?
No, no, I haven't talked to him since. I don't have a personal relationship with him or anything, but yeah, it was cool, man. It was like at the time, it was really iconic. It was like, holy shit, on National Donut Day. I was like, couldn't have been, better timing. So,
Sure.
we thought we were on cloud nine when we won the first 180K. And then it's like all of a sudden, someone just with the phone call doubles it, you know what I mean? Or a little Zoom call just doubles the funding. It was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what was it like going from, because I can only imagine like, making something in your kitchen to winning 180K in a pitch competition. That must have been pretty incredible. Like to even validate what you guys have been working on. That's a
Yeah.
lot of money too in a pitch competition.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was really just an incredible opportunity. And, we were just, we were really just optimistic going into it. We had nothing to lose at the end of the day. Like, worst case scenario, we come home and we're in the same position. So, yeah, it was just a crazy opportunity. But at the end of the day, it was just our persistence and our hustle. We always got out there. We were always putting ourselves in the position, and it's preparation meets opportunity, and that's the best luck you can create for yourself.
Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely. That's pretty cool, man. That's awesome. So you guys are, you win a pitch competition. That's obviously like a huge springboard. At
Yeah.
this point, were you guys only selling on your own website as well?
Yeah. So, in the very early days, I'm trying to think back. So, so after we were making it ourselves at the house, or Amira was really making it at the house, we got the funding and we actually were making it ourselves in a commercial kitchen. And we did that for probably about a year. And during that time, we were working on reformulating our product because at the time it only had like a 3 day shelf life. So it was really limited. We were only shipping in Texas at the time because we didn't have the shelf life to ship it nationwide or anything like that. So during that time, we just we were making it ourselves. We were reformulating the product, and then ultimately that's when we kind of took the next step. What was your question? My bad, I completely
No, you're
forgot.
good. You're good. I was just wondering at that point, like that stage, were you guys like selling it door to
Oh yeah,
door?
yeah,
Did you have a website? Like
yeah, yeah.
what were you
That's where
guys
I
trying
was
to
going
sell
with
the
this.
product at that
Yeah,
point?
so we were selling online on our site, but we were only shipping to Texas because we're headquartered out of Austin, Texas. And then we sold to like local gyms, coffee shops, and nutrition shops, really small scale. I made to call us just like a local business at the time. That was just our hustle. That's how we got out there because um, we didn't have the money for marketing or any of that. So we went to every gym and just sampled ourselves, demo to every gym, nutrition shops. I mean, sometimes we would do like 4 or 5 in a day, and we just really hustled to get the name out there, kind of worked on building social media, but it was literally just online. And that was really small scale. I mean, we were doing like, couple hundred, 1,000 a month. But that's how you get started. You know what I mean? That was the early days for us.
Well, it's funny because I didn't really know that's how it started. And that's exactly how our X bar started. I don't know if you know that. Like like they were going door to door in Chicago and it was like CrossFit boxes, coffee shops,
Yeah.
and then eventually launched a website. And then they're doing it the exact same way. And then Amazon. That's really cool. That's wild. So then you guys are doing that. And then at this point do you have anyone else on the team or is it just you two? Are you guys just kind of slinging it together?
Yeah, so it was myself, Amir, and then we had two other co-founders who actually played football at UT. They were captains on the UT football team, so they were with us. One of them actually went to the NFL. He was at the Jaguars, and so he was busy in Jacksonville. And then so it was the three of us, and then we had brought on some early product developers at that time. And so it was really just us. It was just kind of like the four of us, and we just were in the kitchen grinding ourselves. Anyone who was willing to come help, friends, family, whoever wanted to come and help us out, package donuts or wash dishes. We were grateful for all the help because it was just us grinding in the early days. But yeah, we were a small team, and We're still small and nimble. We just, we make do with a smaller team.
Got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Did that help having? I feel like having someone on an NFL team would be a great plug to get some donuts into some high profile people.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's where we had to kind of figure out product. It was because we were starting to talk to like the University of Texas. We were talking to LSU. We were talking to some of these NFL teams, and it was like we didn't have the product the product wasn't ready for one for scale or for just the nutritional requirements. So that's when we had to kind of reformulate and focus on a lot. But yeah, it was a cool opportunity, and that's what we're still working on today.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a never ending trial and error, right? So
Yeah.
what's like the biggest difference that you guys figured out from the original donut to like the reformulated donut? Was there like a big change?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So um the biggest thing that we really wanted to focus on between the original product and then kind of what we're selling today, well, shelf life was a big one. We wanted to open it up to start shipping nationwide. We wanted to ultimately get to retail. Nutrition was huge for us. So like in the early days, it was, I don't even remember what we were using like basically like a non-clean label protein. We're using like any discrete ingredients that were local and easy to get. And
Mm.
so the product wasn't as clean as it is today. And then we wanted to focus on convenience. So making the donut pre-glazed, where before you had to put the glaze on yourself, put toppings on or like sprinkles or whatever.
Oh, it would
Um,
like come and you'd have to like do it yourself.
yeah, and ultimately, I think the biggest consideration, I mean, that was all kind of more on the product side, and what we want to do was the manufacturing side of things and commercial scale. You can get away with a lot on a smaller scale when you're making, a couple thousand and you're doing it yourself. But when you're looking at commercializing, going into a co-packer, you're looking at real scale like truckloads and pallets of product. It's a completely different ball game. It's got to be, you need a more robust process, and so that was all the considerations that came into play. And at the time, we're learning on the fly, right? We're first time entrepreneurs. We don't know any of this shit. We don't come from the food industry. So yeah, it was a lot of learning. And that's what really took us a while. But also, with our product, we're bringing innovation. There's not another product like this on the market. And so bringing innovation is really tough when you're setting a new standard, creating a category. I mean, there's a lot of limitations and a lot of things that restrict you from getting to the next step, and that's why a lot of people aren't successful. But that was our goal: is like, how do we commercialize, how do we scale, how do we take it to the next level? And that's how we've always kind of compounded, or kind of like the snowball effect, if you will. Is just like, one thing at a time, and that's what we've been focused on since day one.
Got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Is was there what was like the biggest, surprise? Because obviously, like you said, you were a first time entrepreneur. Obviously, like I'm sure the product itself was a challenge, and it sounds like that's something that's like always been something
Mhm.
that's iterated on and tweaked. What was like the biggest thing that was shocking to you when you started your own brand and your own donut company? Like, you know what I mean? For like the first year, what was something you look back on now and you're like, wow, I would have never guessed that was part of this journey.
Man, everything. Everything was just so difficult. But I would say, like, kind of sticking on the manufacturing piece, like that whole thing, like going, but like knowing what I know today, you skip all that stuff. Like, in my opinion, like you can, if you're bootstrapping, like you have no other choice. That's the way to go. But to me, it's like you start with funding, because that's how you accelerate this process. I think what's taken us so long is, we didn't have the capital to get started. And so like we had to do the slow grind, build up the demand ourselves. Because when you're in the early days, when you're trying to get into a co-pack or something, they have minimums and they have these volume requirements. When you're like a local small business and making 1,000, like no co-packer gives a damn about 1,000. They can go make, 100,000 or hundreds of thousands for other companies. And so I think that was one of the biggest shocks, is like, damn, are we going to have to be in a kitchen our whole lives? You know what I mean?
Oh
And then
yeah.
it's like, and then it's one of those things. It's like, that's not even realistic if you're trying to get where we want it to be and you want to scale and commercialize. And so I think that was one of the biggest shocks, is like getting into a new co-packer, reformulating, having a product that you could scale, because recipes don't scale. Your grandmother's salsa or whatever,
Right.
she can make it a great jar for you or whatever, but making 10,000 jars is a different recipe. And so I think those were all like the nuances of a food startup, I guess, if you will, and things we didn't know just in the early days. And so there's a lot of challenges getting started for us and a lot of learning curves. And, that's why it took us longer than we did. But knowing what I know now, I think the best thing is, start with capital or start in retail. I think for us, if we would have had those purchase orders and those volumes, it's a lot easier to go to a co-man and be like, hey, Walmart wants our product and they want to buy 50,000 in November or whatever. So we need to get this ready for that. Whereas, we're building our own volume online. So it was a different set of challenges, but I think that looking back, we could have saved years of time knowing what we know now, but I guess that's why you always do it better your second time, right?
Yeah, there you go. That's a good way to think about it. And I mean, so that's the other thing I thought was cool about your story too, though, was that you guys really built this brand online, and you've really been able to scale it to the point where you guys are online between D2C, Amazon. I know Amazon, you guys became the #1 donut recently, so congrats on that.
Appreciate
So two huge channels for you guys, and then we'll build into it, but would love to know major learnings since you guys launched of being a D2C brand. I know obviously you have a product that when it's hot out, you have to, ship with cold storage. So I'm sure that's been a challenge.
it.
But what has it been like scaling a D2C business? And then really through this last year of COVID, did that help accelerate it? Has that made it more challenging? Like, what have been some of the pros and cons of doing it the way you guys did it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think for us, it was the only route to market, right? Because if you don't have these retail relationships or, a distributor or broker, like, you're not selling in store, like there's only one distribution channel and it's online. So I think that's kind of in the early days, that's why we started online. But I think there's a lot of pros and cons, for us, online has been great in the sense that you have a relationship with the customer, right? You have the ability to remarket a customer. So if we were to launch in, let's call it Kroger tomorrow, we say all of our data that we have from our customers, like emails, phone numbers, we're able to say, hey guys, we just launched in Kroger, go buy us. So I think it's great from that standpoint that you can really build a true community. Whereas if you go straight to retail, it's tougher to build a community because it's more transactional. You're not really engaging with the customer. So I think being direct consumer is great in that sense. And then I think also what we really liked about kind of starting online was the ability to manage expectation, right? You don't have to, if you're not at the scale to launch in a nationwide rollout with a Costco or someone big, you can really control volumes, you can control, your growth, if you will. And so I think there was a lot of pros and cons. But it's definitely changed over the last couple of years, you know what I mean, in terms of acquisition or in terms of basically how customers shop has really changed, especially with the pandemic. And so, I think what we've seen is we had a lot of early success. I mean, great wins early on when we first launched. And then COVID hit, and that was an interesting time for us. Because we weren't in retail, we weren't as affected as some of the other companies. But from an online standpoint, it also forced us to kind of double down and really focus our attention to online. So when COVID first hit, everyone quit spending money because they didn't know what was going to happen. So for
Sure.
little companies like us and startups, we were able to kind of double down and really take advantage of that opportunity because it was less competitive online. And, at that time, like toilet paper, things like that were so in high demand. Like you don't need to spend money on marketing or advertising because you're already sold out. So, when the big guys pull their dollars out, it made it a lot easier for us to acquire customers. But now what we've seen in the last kind of like 6 to 9 months is now everyone's like a direct consumer business. Everyone's focused on e-commerce and kind of the omni-channel approach. And so now things are pricing up and becoming more expensive just because everyone saw the opportunity that COVID presented itself. And everyone also realized that they need to kind of have a balanced business rather than focusing all in one area. And so it's been interesting, but I think ultimately, there's pros and cons to online. And I think it's the right way for us to start. And yeah, I think just one last thing about the whole online is moving forward. I see it as a great opportunity to test. If we want to launch a new flavor, you don't want to launch for the first time going into a place like, Walmart or whatever and get it on shelves and people absolutely hate the product, because it's not good for, your metrics, your success with your relationship with the retailer. But if you launch and, it flops, at least you're able to know pretty quickly.
Right.
You can pull the product, you get that immediate feedback from customers because they'll tell you if they hate it. They're
Yeah.
not they're not shy online. So that's where we really see online for us in the future is kind of the opportunity to get immediate feedback when we launch new products, new flavors, but also really to just kind of also build kind of that brand awareness with our customers and support those who are looking for more than just one product or larger carts online.
Love it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's interesting because it seemed like there was two types of brands during COVID. There were the ones that, leaned in right away and saw great success. And there's
Mhm.
some that kind of like held back and didn't know what COVID was going to do. And they were like way behind. So it's cool to hear that you guys kind of rode the wave and it sounds like you had some early success, during that, switch to more of an online sales approach.
Mhm.
Um, you hit on the bootstrapping thing, and I think one of the things I wanted to dive into was obviously the news that you kind of hinted at, which is you just finished your seed round. So first of all, congratulations. Big
Appreciate it.
news. What was that? A little over a month ago now, I think, maybe a
Yeah.
little longer than that. And so would you give everyone a little bit of background on that, just like high level? And then I'd love to ask a little bit of questions into, how you guys went from bootstrapping to raising capital.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, from the early days is always about taking that next step, right? So the first little bit of funding that we got from the pitch competitions and accelerators and things that we done was more so for really it was kind of some validation, but it was also the opportunity for us to grow, get a little bit more traction, and take that business to the next step. I think it was all the key word that people throw out is product market fit. Is
Mhm.
the ability for us to kind of validate that this is something that people want and that there is an opportunity here, because I think a lot of people they fail to see it, or they're so blinded by their own I guess their desire to sell the product, or they're just so tied that they're not biased, I guess, within their own product, that they don't see that there's not really a market for an opportunity. So I think that was for us in the early days. We want to get a little bit of product market fit, get some traction, and then ultimately, we built a great business so far online. We launched on Amazon at the beginning of the year, like you mentioned, became the number one selling donut. That
Awesome.
it's been great traction for us, and I think for us, what's the next step? And so we had to kind of assess the business, and retail is the obvious next step for us. And so that's what we're looking to do, is kind of continue to build the brand online, but also focus on taking the product to retail. And that's what the raise is for, is to prepare for that, and then ultimately kind of set us up for that next phase in the business. And so yeah, the way it came about was, obviously it was time to raise, and we really had to lean into our network. I think that's one of the learnings that we made early on, was raising money is hard. It's probably the hardest. Like, we've done a lot of hard things with this business, but it's probably one of the hardest things you have to do, especially as a first time entrepreneur, or you don't have those connections. It's you really have to lean into the ones that you have, and so that's what we did. Shout out to the Super Coffee guys again. Huge shout out to them, because they were really the ones in the early days that they believed in us, and they were willing to help make intros, help introduce us to the right people. They've obviously had a lot of early success and raised a ton of money, and so they were just kind of paying that forward. And so they introduced us to City Capital, who was one of the investors in their business, and now our lead investor in Elite Suites. And that's how we got the ball rolling. We were able to get a term sheet and ultimately close out the round. So it was a huge success.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, congrats. And definitely shout out to the Super Coffee Bros. Um, it's wild because that is like a very common thing that even when I started this podcast and started having people on, I honestly didn't know a lot about. But it's funny because it's like no matter what you start, if you want to raise capital, you like figure out that you need the capital, which I'm assuming is what happened. And I'd love to know a little more about that. Was it like, did you hit a place where you felt like you guys maybe didn't have the capital to produce enough to hit retail minimums, or what was some of the thoughts that you guys worked through to like kind of figure out whether you needed the capital or not, I guess, first off?
Yeah, so I mean, in full transparency, we're not a profitable business, right? And so most businesses aren't. When you first get started, you're really financing the losses until you've achieved scale, and really got the distribution to eventually get to become a profitable business. And so that, at the end of the day, we're running low on cash, and we wanted to expand the brand, and ultimately, you need some serious capital if you're going to have a successful retail launch. And so that's how we pitched it. Was like, hey, we've had this great traction, became the number one selling donut online on Amazon, which is, I mean, really a big win. And so it was like, now we want to take this product to market. We want to take it to retail. We want to roll it out. And you show some of the comparable brands or companies that are doing similar things within other categories, industries, and um, you know, we put together that story, and ultimately, we had great investors who really believed in us, and we were able to get the job done.
Love it. No, that's really
Yeah.
cool. Was it what was like step one? Again, I obviously on here I go from 0 to 1. So like you guys decide you want to raise capital. Did you pick
Yeah.
up the phone and call one of the super coffee guys? Like what's like step one? Are you on LinkedIn? Like how do you even begin that process?
Yeah, if you're like us, like myself and my brother, I mean, just hustlers, right? We any and everything. I think all of the above. So LinkedIn, emails, I mean, Google search, pitch book, all these little online, tech crunch, anything, any kind of investor, we reached out to. I mean, we got more no's than we got yeses, no doubt. And so at the end of the day, it's kind of a numbers game, right? It's like, you shoot 1,000 shots, you just want to make the enough to win the game, right? And so that was kind of our goal. It was kind of casting a wide net, and then ultimately we were getting no's left and right, no, 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 and it was like we had to really kind of reassess what was going on, reassess the business, what we were doing wrong. So we kind of changed our approach, and then we looked to get a warm intro. We are like, all right, well, when you break it down, it's like, why would this random person invest $1 million in someone they've had one phone call with for 30 minutes? It's like, I probably wouldn't do the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that with investors, you build relationships over time, or a lot of people, they invest in their friends or people they know. And that's really what gets the ball rolling. And so for us, we had to lean into our network. And, fortunately, I mean, it's one of those things in life. Timing is everything, right?
Yeah.
Super coffee guys. Jimmy, the CEO, he moved to Austin, Texas one day, and the next day he's working in our office, right? We're seeing him every single day. And we're always talking, and it was in the middle of our race, and we're like, hey man, obviously you've had a ton of success, like we need your help. And he was kind. All the brothers have been great, and they made all these intros, and ultimately it's our job to close them, and that's what we did. So um yeah.
Love it. No, I mean it's cool. It is. It seems like it is such like a grind. Like it's a hustle. If you know how to hustle and grind and anything, that's how fundraising is going to be similar. Um, my next thought is like, was it really really hard to get like the first yes to be part of a round? And then because I can only assume like if you're a big time investor and you're like, okay, cool, who else is at the table? And you don't have
Yeah.
anybody yet, it's like, oh shit, we're number one. And then,
Yeah.
or do a lot of investors like, or do some like Citi, like, do they want to be a lead? And I guess I would love to know a little bit about that. Just like, do you need to get like one domino to fall and then usually some more will follow with it? Like people like to follow the money, or is it,
Yeah.
how does that process kind of work?
Yeah, so this is free game for everyone out there, because just like everything else, we had to live and learn, right? When we went out there, we're like, okay, this is our valuation, this is how we're going to do it, this is our term sheet. You learn quickly, you don't dictate the round, right? You get an investor who creates the term sheet, and they become the lead investor. And so I think that was our first mistake when we went out to raise. Was we went out with the term sheet, and we're telling everyone, this is what our valuation is. Do you want to, put in money? We didn't know what we were doing, right? This is our first time trying to raise money. Everything else was
Sure.
pitch competitions or accelerators. And then we quickly found out that's not how you do it. And so basically the way to start is to find people who lead rounds, especially early stage seed rounds. And City Capital is one of those organizations that do that. And so they they did their diligence, did a lot of vetting. They, vetted the business. It's a long process. And ultimately they gave us a term sheet. And once you have a term sheet from a lead investor, then you take that term sheet to other investors who like to follow on. what I find, at least with early stage seed investments, is that obviously it's the riskiest investment. So a lot of
Yeah.
people, they like to follow on after someone's done the diligence. And so City Capital, in this case, they did all the diligence on us. They made the term sheet, and then ultimately other organizations follow on. And usually, people like City, they have other like syndicate funds or whatever that they work with. And so, they had another person come in on the round with us, and that's ultimately how it all came together. So, it was a long process just because it was our first time, and there was a lot for us to learn. And you gotta there's just so much in the legal that has to come into play here, because you got to get the right entity, formation of the business, all this extra stuff. And so, it was an interesting process, but we'll do it a lot faster next time, right?
There
That's
you
kind of
go. Yeah,
our
right.
approach. So
Exactly. No, it's great. And for people listening who have no idea, or don't know a lot about capital raises, diligence, I'm assuming, did they just like come in and they want to look at your P&L and your books and just like kind of poke holes in the business and ask questions and make sure they fully understand what they're signing up for? I'm guessing is what that means.
yeah, that's on a basic level, that's kind of what they do, is just go through the financials, go through the numbers, validate everything that you said is true. Did we actually sell millions of dollars worth of donuts, or did we only sell one and we're putting on the front, right?
Ah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of just running through everything and making sure that it is a viable business, and that what we're saying is actually true. And then one thing that's interesting about City in particular, and there's a lot of investors that do this, but part of it was we brought on their operations team. So what they do is they really come in to early, like in particular, early stage businesses like ourselves. They attach their operations team to you, and that's almost like a form of diligence. Is what they're doing is they're helping kind of build the infrastructure and preparing for scale, because ultimately, you know although we've built the foundation, had a strong start, to take it to the next level, you really want to have people you trust in there. And so that's what they do, is help you bring on like an operations team to really get the business ready for scale, get it ready for retail, and take that next step. And so that's kind of like an extension of the diligence process, because they really start to understand the business fundamentally, and they get to really see all the challenges firsthand. So I thought it's been great. I think the relationship we have with them, partnership, has been amazing, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. That's really cool. And so now that the round is closed and you guys have gotten the money, what are some of what can, people listening, fans of the brand, what can people expect some of that money to be put towards?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we keep hitting is just getting into retail stores. I think that's our number one request for people is, they want to try the product. They ask, where can they find us? And so I think going to stores is next. And I think maybe actually the more popular request is, where's the new flavors at?
There you go. Yeah,
So
because
that's
we got three. Like I said, we got three. They're behind you if you're watching. I have all three of them sitting here. They're delicious, but yeah, you have three. So you have three flavors today.
Yeah, so for us, I mean, product innovation is going to be huge for us. So new flavors. We look at product extension. So donut holes are in the near future.
Slam dunk.
Um, and then ultimately, being Elite Sweets, we want to be the leader in the better for you sweets category. And so we're going to launch other lines of products, low sugar protein packed products. So that's where it's going to go. That's where some of the money's going to go. And then obviously getting into stores is going to be huge for us, just to really have distribution. And so you can find us at your local, gym, nutrition shop, convenience store. That's where we're trying to get.
Love it. That's so exciting. Very, very cool. And so now you guys, like I said, finish the round. You have some big key things you're focusing on. You mentioned flavors. Is there anything you want to tease on here? You definitely don't have to, but is there any flavors people should get excited about?
I'm gonna let this one be a surprise,
Love
but
it.
if you wanna get early access to learn more, you can go to elitedonut.com. You can sign up online, and you know, our VIPs always hear about things first. So I'll let you guys find out online.
Love it. Love it. Great plug too. That was great. All right. So we're getting towards the end. There's a few questions I always love to ask every founder that comes on here. The first one is how do you get shit done? So And what I mean by that is, obviously you're a CEO, you're a founder, you have a ton of stuff going on, lots of different things happening at once. Are you an app guy? Do you have like certain apps that you like to use to organize your life? Are you a pen and paper person? What do you use to, hit your goals and really just accomplish daily tasks?
That's a good question. I've never really considered this one. Honestly, all I can say is I guess I'm truly a workaholic. For me, I'm one of those people, I can't stop thinking about the business for a minute. I can't separate. There's no work-life balance. It's kind of work and life at the same time, right? But now I don't do anything in particular. I love what I do, right? I think at the end of the day, it's my job to drive the business forward and continue to lead Elite Suites and push us closer towards our mission and vision. And so I don't do anything in particular. I wake up, get to work. I like to get a workout in. That's kind of part of my routine. But outside of that, man, I love the grind. But as we've raised money and kind of built out the team a little bit, my job isn't so strenuous like it really used to be, because we built this business from the ground up. So, I mean, we used to be on every aspect from operations, manufacturing, R&D, logistics, sales, marketing, you name it. And now we've kind of built out the team a little bit where I'm able to take a step back and really focus on moving the business forward as opposed to kind of working in the day to day. So, it's a good balance, but we just love the grind. So
Yeah, no. That makes sense, and love that passion behind it. So you don't have any tools at all. You don't use like you don't use like notes on your computer, your
I,
phone, your Google Calendar guy. There's got to be something.
Yeah, I mean, definitely Google Calendar. I like to stay on track with my schedule for sure. So anything that's scheduled needs to be on my calendar, or else I forget for sure. It just goes past me. But recently, yeah, I have been big on pen and paper. I think it just helps me remember better. It helps me kind of organize my thoughts, but definitely notes. I'm always like, I'll go on a walk or something, and I'm thinking, put it in my notes app and table it for later. But yeah, nothing out of the ordinary. But yeah, I'm definitely writing a lot more. I got my little notebook here.
Oh, I
So
love it. Yeah, just all kinds of scratches. I love it. Yeah, I know it's funny. I tell my wife the same thing. Like she cracks me up now because she puts everything, like even if we have like plans with friends, on our shared calendar, because I'm like, if it's not in the calendar, it's not in my life. It's like not happening. So that
I
makes
hear
sense.
that.
The next question is around just like source of knowledge. So whether it's podcasts, a book, what for the audience listening today would be a source of knowledge that you would recommend?
Yeah, I love podcasts personally. YouTube, I'm huge on that. I'm not the traditional book reader. I'm going to be honest. I've never been a great student, and it's not that I'm not smart. I don't know. It's just not one of those things that I don't read a whole lot. I wish I did. It's something I want to practice more, but completing a book is a chore to me, man. I don't enjoy it as much, but podcasts, I truly love it. I love that firsthand account. So, similar to how you said, like, oh, we had a similar RX bar journey. I listen to people like Peter. I listen to all these CEOs of these major companies and how they came up, how they really grinded, and hearing it from them and hearing their perspective is huge to me. And I think that's really powerful. And it's just quicker, man. I like to absorb the content, 45-minute, 30-minute chunks
Yeah.
while I'm driving. So, or walking or whatever it's doing. So I'm huge on podcasts, YouTube, and I mean, we have Dr. Google, man. That's one thing that is at our disposal. So you can find literally anything you want online. So that's what I'm doing, but podcasts is what I'm really huge on.
No, that's great. I laugh because I was thinking about it today. I think I told you before we started recording that I have another episode coming out with Jake Carls from Midday Squares, and he's
Uh,
a big book guy. If anyone follows him, he's always like posting the next book he reads, and I'm like, how do you read through so many books? But it's interesting because there's some of these people, like these books about CEOs from companies that we all have heard of, but maybe they're just not part of the business. Like he's reading one about the guy that started Trader Joe's, and I'm
mm.
like, it'd be those guys need to come back on the podcasts now that podcasts are big. I think a lot of those guys would have some cool stories. I'm sure. No, that's awesome though. I appreciate it. Is there any podcasts that stand out to you? Like, what's your favorite? Besides this one, of course. Of course.
Yeah, of course, SimpliFinance for sure. And honestly, really just all CPG ones, man. Like to be honest with you, I'm really focused in the industry, so I like to listen to all the CPG podcasts. I was huge on Tom Bilyeu and the founder of Quest. He's the founder of Quest. So I really enjoyed a lot of his podcasts. I kind of look at the companies we resemble or companies, that we idolize. And it was like the Quest Nutritions, the Halo Tops, the RX bars, of the world. One of my advisors, Nick Ingersoll, I loved listening. Actually, that's how I met him. Is I just used to listen to a lot of podcasts that he was featured on, and then ultimately he started his own. And one day we were in Expo West, and I saw him, and I was like, I got to talk to this guy. And I waited in line with everyone else. I really didn't want to. I was like, man, but I'm out here in LA, so let me just go ahead and at least have a conversation with him. And now he works with us. He did all our rebranding and packaging, and so I really enjoyed listening to his podcast. But really, anything CPG focused, I like to stay industry specific and really hear what the other guys are doing, or kind of tips and tricks, and how people kind of navigated landscape. But podcasts are a lot of fun to me.
Yeah, no, love that. That's great. Um, Last question and most important question. How can people follow along with you? So Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever. And then how can people follow along with Elite Sweets, and how can people try the donuts?
Yeah. If you want to reach out to me personally, LinkedIn's the best place. You can find me at Amin Bahari. If you want to follow Elite Sweets, kind of see what we're doing, check out the community, join the community. Elite.sweets on Instagram. We're on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook at the Elite Sweets. So check us out there. And you can order online at elitedonut.com or on Amazon. So yeah, we ship nationwide, and give us a try.
Love it. Love it. I will add all the links to that. You guys are an emerging TikTok account, I will say. You guys have been up and
Yeah.
coming. I've been paying attention.
Yeah, we got to stay ahead of the trends, man. That's where people are going. That's where the attention's at. That's where we want to be. And so that's a great thing about being a startup. You can really you can innovate, you can move quickly, and pivot. And that's what we're doing, just trying to stay ahead of the big guys. You got to take advantage of every little opportunity or advantage that you have. And our ability to be nimble and test out all these platforms is what keeps us alive and well. And so that's what we're doing.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. I will add all those links to the show notes. I mean, thank you so much, man. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking the time. I know you're busy, so I appreciate you telling everyone your story. This is awesome. We'll hopefully getting a lot of new people trying the donuts.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, and hope I was able to add some value to people. And I wish I knew some of these things when I got started. So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that it's helpful to some people out there.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it will be. I'm sure it will be. But thanks again. Loved it. It was
Yeah,
fun.
thank you.